Welcome guys. So this time this is an upgraded version of the slideshow that we described in the latest tutorial. And okay, this one there is a few changes, so there are some mistakes I've been doing before, so I will cover them first, and then there is some I've actually upgrade to it so we can tweak the effects a little bit in a more graphical way, let's say, by changing the coordinates of some of these image textures. So if we just go and take a look at shading, this is basically the same setup as last time, a little bit cleaned up. But one mistake I was doing last time, I will start with that. I was telling that we had to repeat the last image in order for it to loop, but this is a very basic thing to do in Blender. Actually, repeat the coordinates is such a trivial thing to achieve. So I just came into this vector setting for all the images, and instead of just adding a vector indefinitely in the x-axis or the y-axis for now, I put this wrap function. Wrap function is basically a modulo of 0, which means if I have a value that is going to go to infinity, I will this value have a modulo function will cut it down and reset it for it to go like this. So this is how many things are using modulo right now, even the function of sliding. But the actually, why do I do not have to repeat the same texture at the end? I could just repeat the coordinates. So the x-axis is gonna go like this, and it's gonna loop back at the end of my loop of, for example, 7 images, and I can repeat that same image at the end over there, which means I added this wrap function that takes the max, the repeat amount, and it's gonna make loop my images. So I'm gonna have this image, the first one, and then the second one, and then 3, and then etc. And at the end I'm gonna have the same first image repeating with all the blanks that I need. It's gonna repeat forever, but actually I just need one time to repeat, since I need that last transition to transition smoothly to the next, and then here I change the coordinates back to 0. So this is why the wrap function is there. I could simply use a modulo function to do the same stuff, but with this value being this one, that value is a little tweak for the wrap function. So we're not going to change this at all. But modulo has an issue when it goes to 0. So if you have a modulo function and you want to do that, it's okay. But in 0 it's going to do something like that, which means now you're going to lose your any chance for it to repeat like we want. In this case, we want it to repeat like this. In case we go into the negative, in the negative area of the x, this wrap function is going to do exactly that. So we don't need this modulo node, and basically it's the same. So it adds some value, the value that I will push my image to, like this. For example, in y, I'm pushing this image down, so I'm adding some y value to this function, and I just ensure with the wrap function this is going to repeat after my loop of n images. So that was the little trick. Okay, the mix node here is just to switch between the x and the y axis. If I change the axis, it's gonna is going to take either this x that is modified here or this y that is modified here, and leave the rest as is. So here is the basic explanation of how the chords are supposed to repeat coordinates of this image. So those are all the same thing, and they're repeating because I'm using this factor to know where I am in my loop, which I kind of explained it last time, so I would not have to come back with this. Like, these nodes are quite useful, like I explained last time. These are a node of 5 potential inputs that can repeat. If you want more, you can repeat some more and pass these original in the vector and next, just as I did here. You pass the same parameters to the next block, and it's going to chain them. Of course, you will need to set the total amount here. My images are 7. If I put it to 8, there will be a problem. It's not going to loop correctly at the end. So I have to always ensure I am informing the number of images that I have here, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and this is the number that is here. Loop. It should loop each 7 images. There's not more dynamic way I found it to be able to ensure in a smart way. So for now we can just set it here once we know the number of our total images. So this is basically the slideshow that we had, that we can change the axis here. 1 is y and 0 is x, and then we can in here we can change from 0 to 1. So if it's 1, then it's going to be still. It's not even going to loop in any direction or slide in every direction. It's just going to try to remain the same. It can be useful in the effects we want to plan for next. So we're going with that. So what I was trying to upgrade this version about is once we have this factor that we know that we can slide everything along with, there is a great way to be able to control the transitioning. So here, for example, I have this expo node, and this expo node is a ease node. So this easings in these considered transitions is just the way that it's going to go slower or faster, or we can smooth our transitions a little bit the way we want. For example, if I mute this, it's going to be a very, very linear transition between 0 and 1, which means 0 and 1 will be 0 and 1 are going to be my factor that is looping from one image to the other. And actually I made a curve by mistake, so there's no curve. So this is going to be 0, and then it's going to go to 1, and then like this, which means this is called linear, of course. So we don't need, most of the time it's cool to have this, but it's better to have some smooth transition, some more Bezier looking curves of transition, which means expo is exponential. So expo, this one is already, it has a exponential value in it, but if we want to change it to custom ease that I have here, then we can put our custom exponent here. This is basically going to be the same, the in and the out. So what does the in do? So we repeat 0, 1, not like this. So what the in does is this one, and what the out does is this one. So there is a way to have like more curvy or more round. All of this is basically these transitions. So there are 4 there. There are, of course, custom ease that we know. There is expo that we know. There is circular, I think, yes, circular. And then there should be maybe cubic, but no, cubic and the rest are going to be just a different custom ease here. It's going to be 2, 3, 4, 5. This is going to be our curve called cubic, quint, etc., etc., because it's gonna just change the exponent to a higher integer, 4, 5. We can change it like that. So circular is just one very precise. So that's why there is a custom one that is name circ. And then there is also back expo. Back is quite cool for some time, because when you want your image to go like this, then this is gonna be the back expo. So instead of going 0, 1 like this, it's gonna go 0 and a little bit before 0 and a little bit over 1. And this is what the back function does. So back is also possible, and then elastic. I think it's there. So elastic is gonna be like something like this, that go like this, and then go like this. So this is elastic motion. So sometimes it could be useful. And the bounce function, that is quite similar, but the problem not problem, but the characteristic of back and elastic is that if you clamp the value, the effect is not gonna be good, because if we have the 0 and 1 values here, both elastic and back, they go a little bit under and a little bit over. I mean, over, a little bit over, like this. Which means if you clamp this value at the end, then it's gonna stop here. It's gonna ignore these steps here, which is gonna look very awkward. So you need to remember that both elastic and back, they have to go a little bit over and under these 0 and 1 values. But bounce is gonna be basically this, boom, 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 like this, like a bouncing ball. Not here, but here. So it's gonna be like this, doom, 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 like this. So basically, this is what bounce does. So instead of having to go with a float curve, and then have to design it manually here, you know, like this. So this is basically what some kind of eased curve would do. But I don't need it here, I mean here. So this is basically what the ease curve would do with some Bezier rounding or smoothing, compared to a basic linear. But instead of having to do yourself this these weird stuff, you know, like trying to make it bounce on your own, it's quite better to have this. The result is always going to be better with these mathematical functions. So these nodes are ready for us, including expo and customize. Okay, expo and customize. I believe these are the 6 ones that are here. The 5 ones, I remember. Yes, with a circ. So basically, we have this to help us with some smooth transition between 0 and 1, etc. So if the values you need are higher than that, if you don't need 0 and 1, you can just multiply this by any, you multiply by your current value. Math multiply by your current value, whatever value it is. So if your value is 6 and you want to do the same transition between this and this, you can multiply those two, and that is going to be exponentially scaled. That's quite easy to understand. So basically here I'm able to make much nicer transitions. If I took bounce just back to show you, and I change this into that. So in and out, I will try to make 2. So something happens. What is it? It's too much. You know, something happened. Constant. Because it's not ruling my. No, it's not. This is actually this one is. I kept linear for the rest. The back is now controlling only the emission. That's why it became strange like this. What I should do is something like that, I believe. Even that doesn't work. What's going on? Factor? I don't think it's that. gonna be that. Come on. No, it's not gonna be that. Something happened here. Is this that? No, it's not gonna be that. Ah, okay. This should not be there. This should be there. Exactly. Here. That's why I'm using them. Here. So expo back. If I'm changing expo here, then now we have this effect. This is what I was trying to explain. Of course, it's been too long. I'm working on this, so I'm confused now. Anyway, yeah, I want to erase that. Thank you. So these are sets of methods. You still can control here from a mixed value if you want to change between those three effects. Elastic here, I can show you as well. Doom, so it's going to it's going to have this elastic feeling with it. But since the other effect is not I'm kind of tweaking the brightness of the image for the final effect. So now it tweaks too much the brightness of it. It tweaks it also elastically, which I don't really need. So here I'm kind of better with this basic one. And so still you can have in and out. So if I don't want it to be animating in, it's going to make only the out transition smoothed out, and it's going to kind of rush the beginning of the animation towards the end, which on the opposite way, if I change the out, it's going to go smooth at the start and rush towards the end. So this is basically what the expo function does. You probably don't have to get inside these nodes that much, because these are like very famous easing functions that are used quite everywhere in programmation, in video games, everywhere. So these nodes are going to be ready for you in a separate file. You can use them as you want, as long as you have values, a curve, as long as you have a slope somewhere between 0 and 1, you can always, or 0 and any curve you want, any slope you want. So once we have this effect here, the fun part now was to tweak the coordinates of this image to make more fancier animations. So I'm going to put this back to still. So now we have this image are just not sliding anymore. And now we have a set of effects here. Now the demonstration is now we can start to have fun with all these different textures that's going to mess up with our coordinates. So for example, I'm going to go to the middle. I'm going to try to go to the middle, the middle of an animation. And first of all, I'm going to disconnect this emission strength. It's going to remain at 1 all the time. So there's no more tweaking of the emission strength to make it look brighter when it switches. And now we can start to look at this coordinate vector that arrives here. If I trick this coordinate vector around, I can, still using my time in order to control the tweak at the end, but I can tweak a lot of things. So I can start to mix it with a Musgrave texture, for example. So in order to tweak it with a Musgrave texture, I'm going to set these here. So this is going to make this be 1. So it's going to go to the second one, and then in this one it's going to go also to the second one. So it's going to ignore those previous effects. So this effect is going to be taken in account. And what I'm doing is that I'm taking these seconds, I'm adding it to the vector, and I'm checking this Musgrave effect to make sure that I want these coordinates to be in the middle of the transition. So I want my if my curve between 0 and 1 is something like that, this is 0, this is 1, I want this part of the area to be more deformed, and then come back to a regular coordinates when the animation is, the transition is finished. So instead of this kind of curve, I will have this kind of curve. Toom, toom, toom. So this being 1 and this being 0, and this means the deformation. And this is the transition. So as it transitions, it should be 0 here, and when it's going to be 1, the next image. In the middle, I want it to be highly deformed, and at the end of the transition, I want it to be back into normal coordinates. Which now we can just check out by changing this vector, the result of these. So it's going to be the Musgrave texture. And now let's look at the effect. Okay, now it looks already very deformed. So it's going to deform as much as in the middle of the transition to kind of switch between two images in a fancier way. So that factor here I'm changing using ping pong. Ping pong will be this function basically that does the curve I was telling you about. This one changing to this one. Tac. So this ping pong is always very handful. We could make it by hand, but it exists in Blender, so let's use it. And then with this value, I'm having fun with the transitions. So if I plug a Musgrave texture, these are going to be the coordinates of that texture. I'm just tweaking it in a deformed way. So this is what Musgrave does. I can scale it more if I want, like this. So this is going to be very, it's still going to look different. So then we have a lot of potential effects to be how to say, that we can use, because okay, this is the offset I don't need. So this Musgrave is not a Musgrave texture basic, because I'm plugging it back to -1. I'm mapping the range, because Musgrave texture has values from -1 to 1. This is the kind of specification of the Musgrave. Musgrave does some weird shapes like this, but some values in this are -1, and some values are 1. So if we want the full spectrum of that of these values, and if we want to see it between 0 and 1, we have to map their range. So this is what it does. I can change here to some other algorithm, Musgrave algorithm. They're all very cool. They all give different results, and I like this Musgrave texture a lot. It's one of my favorite to do some quick effects. So once we're here, we have this Musgrave effect. I try to put this scale back. I don't remember how much it was. Here, it was 5.7, something like that. So now if I have this Musgrave, it would change it in this kind of way. And if I change it to, let's say, the other one, which is this one, now I have this wave texture. So now this one is fun as well, because it looks like water drops somehow. So this wave texture is going to be a different texture that starts in here in the center, and it goes in a circular wave like this, which means it's going to deform my image in these directions all the time, with some wavy going this way like that in every direction, starting from the center, expanding on the sides. So this is where this wave texture comes from, and what it does for me. If I forgot to add anything here, you will see that adding this -0.5, that ensures just to me that I'm talking about the center. So if I'm not adding anything, it's going to start perhaps here. Yeah, this the center of the wave is gonna be in the corner, which I don't really want in this effect, but maybe you can want it, or you can maybe generate it randomly. All of these parameters are once again the wave texture parameters that I can play around, and I also play around the wave offset because I want something wave offset different for every seconds or something like this. Yeah, this is what the base the effect does actually. It pushes the wave outwards. If I mute this, maybe the effect is going to be stronger. Okay, kind of. It just adds something, I believe. Anyway, so this is what the wave texture does, and then as a last example, there is this Voronoi. So this Voronoi is fun because it changes my images. It kind of cuts it into Voronoi blocks, and this is what the Voronoi texture helps us to do here. So if I want to smooth it more, I will smooth it like this, so you will have more hard time to decipher where are the blocks exactly, but we can find a middle. If I really don't smooth it, it's gonna be very like glass breaking or a little bit sharp, right? Quite too sharp for me, so I prefer to have it smoother and a little bit like this, and I think this looks quite nice. So basically this is the slideshow effect examples that what we could do with our coordinates once we have nice texture coordinates for all of images and the right factor to be able to control it. And as a last thing, I just switch. I reuse the same ping pong value to ensure that I could have emission changing through the transition, which means now in between at the exact moment in between transition is going to jump to some very high emission value, so gonna go to the white side of things. That's why I pushed it. I cranked it to 50 here. 50 emission value is quite high. Let me try to, yeah, here 50. I can even go more if I want. The effect is going to be very bright. Okay, let's try like this. Okay, kind of. Okay, this expo is like a little bit cranked down, so that's why 50 was already enough for me, I considered. And you could also change it to something different, like -3. Let's check this. What does that do? Yeah, it will switch to black. -50. Yes, this is gonna switch to black a little bit too fast. -15. Yeah. So anyway, the best effect was to just keep it how it was. Basically, this is what our slideshow became. So I hope now you have understanding of vector coordinates that are used to place your objects in the shader, and later in geometry nodes it's going to be these texture coordinates are going to be replaced by the position of things, but these are also going to be vectors. So as long as you know how to manipulate them and quite make them do what you want, you will have no problem from switching to shading nodes to geometry nodes. So this is quite it. In order to have my loop constantly looping, I was forced indeed to control my render my timeline. So I did. I'm pretty sure I did some calculation to find out this number, because it's going to be 7 times 2 times 24 or something like this. Let's try this. 7 times 2 times 24, 336. So that's exactly it. So 7 here